I didn't even make it past the reception area before the whispers started. I'd barely stepped onto the creative floor, still sliding my phone into my bag, when I saw him turn. Ethan Reyes. My so-called boss. Cool gray eyes, tight jaw. Like he'd been waiting all morning for someone to shred apart. Before we dive in, drop a comment and tell us where you're tuning in from. And after hearing my story, tell me honestly, what would you have done in my shoes? I read every single comment. Let's get into it. He raked his gaze over me, pausing on my tailored olive green pants, ivory silk shirt, and block heels, then curled his lip like I'd shown up wrapped in tinsel. Seriously, he barked, loud enough for the open plan office in Chicago to echo. That's what you think is appropriate? His strokes halted, heads twisted. Murmurs hovered in the hush. Everyone smelled blood. I kept my voice steady. Not timid. Not apologetic. Is there an issue, Mr. Reyes? I asked calmly. He stalked closer, eyes stormy. An issue? Yeah, there's an issue. This is a design agency, not a farmer's market. There it was. The performance, the public humiliation he'd clearly practiced in front of his mirror. I wasn't aware these clothes violated the dress code, I answered coolly. Yet the office air seemed thicker by the second. You weren't aware because I didn't think anyone needed instructions not to look like a coffeehouse barista, he shot back. I caught a couple of my colleagues smirking. Others dropped their eyes into their lattes like cowards. He leaned closer, voice dropping. Let me make this crystal clear. You're out, pack up. You don't belong here. My pulse didn't spike, not even a flutter of fear. Because what Ethan and the entire office didn't know was that I wasn't some naive 28-year-old new hire desperate for a paycheck. I was the silent investor who owned Blackline Creative. And I'd just finished my final test. They didn't know that 2 months ago I became the majority stakeholder of the very agency Ethan Reyes tried to run like his personal empire. They had no clue that the true founder of Blackline Creative, the visionary who built it from the ground up before retiring, had quietly sold me his shares, privately, under a strict NDA. I'd kept my ownership hidden for one purpose: to discover the culture I was inheriting. And let me tell you, today gave me all the answers I needed. But I didn't show my hand. I simply met Ethan's glare, lifted my chin, and gave a small, cool smile. Understood, I said. Then I turned on my heel and left the office, leaving a sea of stunned faces behind me, convinced I was just some random 28-year-old who'd failed the dress code. They were about to learn how wrong they were. 3 hours later, I sat in a private office suite downtown, wearing a charcoal suit and stilettos sharp enough to slice steel. I logged into the executive portal on my own laptop and pulled up the internal HR files. Ethan Reyes' name flashed on the screen immediately. Creative Director. 7 years of service, and buried beneath his spotless record pages of complaints, bullying, intimidation, hostile remarks. All swept aside, ignored. I flagged every complaint for immediate investigation. Next, I drafted a calendar invite for an emergency 9 a.m. leadership meeting. Subject line: New Vision for Blackline Creative. Mandatory attendance. No more undercover. It was time to introduce myself. The following morning, I didn't slip in through the lobby with the junior staff. I didn't crowd into the elevator with interns. At precisely 8:42 a.m., a black Lincoln Navigator eased into Blackline's private parking. Security waved me through, greeting me with crisp salutes. Good morning, Miss Sloane Carter. I stepped out in a sleek power suit, hair twisted into a smooth chignon, heels echoing like a gavel. Upstairs, 12 senior managers huddled, whispering. They had no clue that reality was about to hit like a freight train. At exactly 9 a.m., I threw open the boardroom doors. The room fell silent the moment the doors closed behind me. Heads snapped up. Eyes darted my way. Some stared like I was a ghost. Others whispered urgently. Why is she here? Isn't that the girl he fired? Seconds later, Ethan Reyes stormed in, 2 minutes late, phone in one hand, latte in the other. His confidence evaporated when he saw me standing at the head of the boardroom table. He blinked hard, like the sight short-circuited his brain. He stammered. You're not supposed to be here. I straightened, planting both hands firmly on the table. No, Ethan, I said, voice cool and steady. You're not supposed to be here. He scoffed. Is this a joke? I didn't answer. Instead, I turned my laptop around, displaying the screen to the room. It showed Blackline Creative's ownership summary. Ethan's smirk vanished as he read the top line. Sloan Carter, 51% ownership stake. A hush rippled across the room. Outside the glass walls, even the whispers died. Ethan swallowed, his face paling. What is this? It's called authority, I said. And you just made the biggest mistake of your career. You're lying, the board knew last night, I cut in. You didn't, because you've never been allowed into shareholder meetings. But I have. Silence fell like a weight. I've spent the past 3 weeks undercover here, I said, scanning the room. Watching how people treat each other, seeing who lifts others up, and who tears them down. Eyes dropped, faces paled. Some of you showed kindness, others stayed silent, and some laughed, while a colleague was humiliated over a pair of pants. My voice wavered just slightly. You didn't know who I was, that's fine, but now I know exactly who you are. Ethan opened his mouth. Sloan. Is Carter, I corrected, my tone icy. You no longer have the right to use my first name. I turned my laptop back toward me and pressed a single key. You're officially terminated, effective immediately. Ethan froze, his face turned red, his mouth working silently like a fish gasping for air. You can't do this, he stammered. I just did. Silence clung to the boardroom as he stood there, shaken. Finally gripping his latte with trembling hands, he turned and left, but not before catching the stunned faces of employees who'd once laughed along with him. I watched him go without blinking. Then I faced the board. Let's talk about rebuilding, I said, because this company is about to change. After Ethan left, the silence wasn't merely awkward, it was electric. No one dared speak or even shift in their chairs. I remained standing, letting the silence stretch, forcing them to sit with the weight of what had just happened. Then I spoke, calm and clear. Starting today, I'm auditing every team, every leader, and every ignored complaint. A visible shiver ran through a few people. I've reviewed confidential HR reports, I continued, scanning the table. Some of you have been warned before. Others have avoided consequences because you assumed no one was watching. My eyes locked onto Nina, head of finance. Do you remember Layla from Peril Communications? I asked. Nina's eyes widened. Yes, she whispered. She filed 3 complaints last year, I said. Emotional bullying, unpaid weekends, threats of termination if she refused to stay silent. She was fired without an investigation. Nina's lip trembled. She wasn't skilled enough. Don't, I snapped. Don't finish that sentence. If you've ever dreamed of standing up to the people who underestimated you, or wondered what happens when power shifts in an instant, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned, because Sloan's story is just getting started. Because she did have the skills, I said firmly. I worked beside Layla for a week and watched her outperform her entire team. I let the silence stretch. Then I turned to Henry, head of client relations. You were kind to me, I said. But you laughed when Ethan humiliated me. Why? His shoulders tensed. I didn't want to look like I was defending someone beneath you, he murmured. I gave a short nod. I see. I faced the table. Some of you will get a second chance, I said. Not because you deserve it, but because this company deserves better leadership. And I believe people can grow. I paused, voice low. But if you're here to keep power by crushing others, you'll be gone by the end of the week. From across the room, Jillian, a senior developer who'd once quietly offered me a tissue, raised her hand. Yes? I asked. She looked nervous but resolute. I just want to say I'm sorry for not speaking up that day, she said. I saw what happened, and it wasn't right. I met her eyes. Thank you. Then I turned to the glass wall where employees outside were pretending to work while sneaking glances in. Open the doors, I said. The assistant hesitated. No. The door swung open, revealing me, not as the girl who'd been humiliated, but as the one in charge. I stepped out. Half the floor looked ready to shrink into their seats, but I smiled. A real smile. Calm and unwavering. I want every department lead to bring their teams to the main floor in 10 minutes, I called out. I'll be making introductions and announcements. Gasps echoed, pens dropped. 10 minutes later, the floor was packed, standing room only. I stepped onto the central platform, mic in hand. My name is Sloane Carter, I began. Until yesterday, you didn't know who I really was, but I knew who you were. My gaze swept the room. I worked beside you, I said, voice carrying across the floor. I ate lunch with you. I listened to your conversations. I saw who was kind to the new girl, who was too proud to say hello, and who laughed when someone was humiliated. A ripple of unease moved through the room. I'm the majority owner of this company now, and no, I didn't dress the part when I first walked in, I continued. I let that settle before adding, because I didn't need to. I was looking for character, not compliance. Eyes were locked on me. Some of you passed that test, I said. Others didn't. I paused. I'm not here to punish people for a single mistake, but I am here to dismantle a culture built on fear and ego. At the back of the crowd, I spotted Layla, clutching her reactivated ID badge. She'd returned after I called her last night. I met her gaze as I spoke. If you ever felt like your voice didn't matter here, that stops today. A few cautious claps started, then more joined in. Soon the entire room erupted into applause, hesitant at first, then growing stronger. I felt tears threaten but held them back. The real work was only beginning. I didn't expect him to come back. But 4 days later, after I'd fired 2 senior managers, rehired 3 wrongly terminated employees, and restructured leadership, Ethan Reyes walked right through Blackline Creative's front doors. Unannounced, uninvited, unapologetic. I was mid-meeting with Elise, the team lead who'd avoided me during that hallway humiliation. She was nervously twisting her bracelet when my assistant stepped in. Miss Carter, Ethan Reyes is downstairs. He wants to see you. I lifted my chin. Did he now? Elise went pale. He came back? I stood. Excuse me, Elise, we'll continue in 10. I strode toward the elevator, calm, cold, controlled. The floor fell silent as I stepped into the executive lounge. There he was, lounging like he still ran the place, legs crossed, arms slung over the chair, wearing that same arrogant smirk. Miss Carter, he said, as if mocking me. Looking sharp. Throne suits you. I gave you a clean exit, I replied coolly. Why are you here? He stood slowly, like he'd practiced it. To talk. Man to woman. Make it quick. His smirk faded. You made your point. You embarrassed me. Fine. But this company? I helped build it. You might own it on paper, but I made it work. My systems, my contacts. I crossed my arms. You're bullying. You're silencing. Your fragile ego. You mean those systems? His eyes hardened. You're emotional. Wrong move, I cut him off. I'm strategic, and you're seconds away from being escorted out. He hesitated, recalculating. Look, I'm offering you a deal. I know things buried deep in this company. Hidden accounts, investors you've never met, clients with problems. Fire me, fine, but bring me back as a consultant. I'll help you avoid the storm coming. I stepped closer. You publicly humiliated me over a pair of pants in front of 40 people, and now you want me to hire you back? I'm offering you protection, he snapped. I don't need protection, I said. I need integrity, and you have none. A flicker of panic crossed his face. You think you're better than me? I stared him down. No, I know I am. That was it. I pressed the call button. Security arrived seconds later. I didn't bother watching as they escorted him out. I simply turned my back because he no longer mattered. What mattered were the people still here, the ones trying to believe again. That afternoon, I called Layla into my office. the woman Ethan had driven out of Blackline. She stepped in hesitantly. "You're not just coming back," I told her. "You're being promoted." Layla blinked. "What?" "You're the new head of employee relations." She shook her head. "I'm not qualified." "You're more qualified than half the people who used to sit in this office," I said. Her eyes filled with tears. "Layla, I'm not building a new company. I'm rebuilding the heart of the old one. And that starts with people who care." She nodded slowly, then began to cry. That night, I sat alone in my office, lights off, the Chicago skyline glittering outside. This place wasn't healed yet, but it had a pulse again, and so did I. The final weeks felt like surgery without anesthesia. Some mornings I walked into smiles, other days to cold stares. Not everyone wanted change, especially those who'd thrived in shadows. But I didn't care. By week 4, I had a new leadership team. People I trusted, people who valued purpose over titles. Layla was now head of employee relations. Jillian took over tech. Henry, after owning his silence and proving he could change, stepped into client strategy. And Brenda? Gone. I didn't fire her with drama, just a quiet conversation. "Brenda," I said, "I read every email from last year. I saw how you spoke to your team, how you covered for Ethan, how you manipulated reports." She tried to speak. I raised a hand. "Don't. You know what you did. I gave you 4 weeks to come clean. You didn't." Her badge hit the table 30 seconds later. I won't lie, it felt good, but it wasn't revenge. It was justice. One afternoon, I passed the break room and saw Elise sitting beside a new hire, patiently teaching her how to organize a presentation. Kind. Encouraging. "Nice to see," I said softly. Elise looked up, cheeks pink. "I didn't stand up for you that day, and I hated myself for it." I sat down across from her. "We can't undo who we were, but we can decide who we become." She smiled. "Thanks for not giving up on people like me." Truthfully, I'd almost given up. Not on them, on me. Weeks later came the true test, our quarterly all-hands. For the first time, I spoke not as a secret owner, but as myself. Hundreds gathered, tension thick but hopeful. 5 weeks ago, I stood here humiliated, I began. Not because I'd failed, but because someone mistook power for worth. He said I didn't belong here. I paused. "But I do belong here. Not because I'm the owner, because this company is mine to fix, and I refuse to let it become a place where silence wins." Silence hung heavy. "I'm not interested in being a CEO who hides behind press releases. I want to be human, and I want you to feel this place is worth waking up for." Applause rose. "But this only works if you help me build it. That means accountability, courage, and asking, did I make this place better today? If not, then do better tomorrow." The applause thundered. "I'm Sloan Carter," I finished. "I got fired here for wearing pants. And now I wear what I want, because I know what really matters." Later that night, I walked the empty halls. No whispers. No laughter behind my back. Just me, pausing at the window where Ethan once humiliated me. Smiled, not because I'd won, but because I'd rewritten the ending, and that was everything. If my story meant something to you, tell me in the comments. I'd love your advice, your thoughts, your support. Together, let's stand for workplaces built on courage and respect. And remember, speak up. Silence only protects the wrong people. Be brave enough to rewrite your own ending.